Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar video. This is going to be my next Legacy of Yangchen chapter analysis video. This one is going to be for chapter 5, which is called Previously. So, interesting chapter here. It's the first Kavik chapter in the book, and it's one of those ones where, like, you initially start out the chapter, and at no way at the start of this chapter do you believe that we will eventually get to the point where suddenly Kavik and Yangchen are in the same scene as each other. But somehow we do manage it. This chapter does end up covering quite a bit of ground, and it actually does somehow get us from the start here to catching up at the end of the previous chapter, which of course is Yangchen basically defense mechanism avatar state happening to kind of save her from the fog of lost souls. So big stuff happening here. But yeah, fascinating here at the start with Kavik, of course. He has been recruited effectively to join the Order of the White Lotus, so let's jump in to see how he is doing. So we start off, and it seems like Kavik is doing laundry effectively. He seems to be pulling water out of laundry, towels and stuff like that. But we come to realize that this is actually part of his sort of covert operative training. As a waterbender, it's about trying to hide your tracks. So stuff like pulling water that you've maybe splashed on something off a substance or out of a substance, or a towel or something like that, without anyone noticing it. And so they kind of really emphasize this, the idea of, can he do it without kind of disturbing the way it like looks and is shaped? Because the idea seems to be that like any decent waterbender can pull water out of something, but can you do it delicately enough that you leave sort of no trace behind? And like, it's what you leave behind is it's not wet at all. You get every bit of water out. That's what's kind of being thought to him here by Mama Ayunarak. I think this is the direct confirmation that Ayunarak is a waterbender, because I don't think they particularly made that clear in the first book. But she is a waterbender, of course, so she is actually the one kind of directly kind of presiding over his training here. Now, where we find Kavik here, he is in Bin specifically in a secret Order of the White Lotus safe house underneath Gidu's shrine in Bin So this was the shrine referenced in the very early chapters of Dawn of Yangchen. Now, I don't think there was anything that really connects to this necessarily. It's just a fun, notable location that, like, the place where we effectively almost first encounter Kavik in the first book, we sort of encounter him here, like, almost underneath that area is kind of interesting. But anyway, it is noted that this exercise is life and death. He asks some obvious questions of, like, wait, do earthbenders need to learn how to, like, repack the dirt that they use? Are firebenders kind of out of luck if they burn something that they can't hide? And she says, yes, we've lost people that way. And because of Kavik's own experiences with what happened in, like, John Derry and stuff like that, having to dispose of bodies, he knows that this is absolutely the sort of stuff that goes on. So he is actually doing this training earnestly, of course. So she just kind of points out a few kind of flaws in his technique, because she's also trying to kind of teach him to do this without much movement as well. That, like, you kind of almost need to be able to do this completely on the fly while you're in the process of hiding. So any little kind of twitch and stuff like that, she's trying to kind of get him to stop doing, basically. He does note here that, she was a tough Sifu, but she was the only support he had in Bin these days. It is mentioned his parents were given passes to return to Long Stretch up in the north, and they are completely unaware about, like, what is actually the specifics of kind of what Kavik is doing. As far as they're concerned, he's still working for the Avatar, not the White Lotus, of course. They don't know anything about the White Lotus. Then we get sort of Kavik's own opinions on kind of being part of effectively an ancient society in the shadows and what's going on here. His initial impressions are just that, like it says here, But it quickly became clear the White Lotus protected itself by walling off its branches from each other, keeping the right hand separated from the left. Kavik was the pinky nail, a new growth that could be trimmed as easily as kept. So that's why he is being sort of kept out of the loop here. He is like the absolute most junior member, to the point where he basically doesn't really have a rank in the organization at this point. He gets the impression Ayunarak is sort of like arguing to get him fully kind of involved here throughout this whole thing. So yeah, that's kind of what's going on here. He's just doing this training. He notes that like it's pretty boring. Like he literally like barely ever gets a chance to leave the safe house, and it's always under supervision. All he is doing is this kind of absolute basic training, like nothing fancy for Kavik at this point. But suddenly someone's coming into the safe house, so Kavik decides he's going to use the lessons that Ayunarak taught him here. Now this ends up being this actual like junior White Lotus member called Do, who is a firebender. So the first lesson is hit first, preferably before the enemy even marks you as the enemy. So he just ices this guy's shoes basically as he's walking down the stairs. So he just keels over like straight out to the stairs, like he basically falls out of his shoes. It's pretty crazy what's about to happen. So as he's falling, like Ayunarak sees Kavik do this, and he notes that basically she is executing lesson 2 and 3 here. So bend what your opponent is bending when you have no other choice, and in lesson 3, move your surroundings with your element when you don't have enough of your element. So Ayunarak is just like, she unfreezes the water that Kavik used, then uses the water to sort of create like almost like a web that gets together a bunch of the kind of towels and stuff like that that Kavik is actually working on to create a soft landing spot for Do. So he does manage to get out of this kind of unharmed, but he immediately is furious with Kavik because he's like, you nearly broke my ankles overall. So it's noted here that Do is about 10 years older than Kavik here, which would make him about like 27. And the reason Kavik did this is because when they were sort of training together before, Do put a fire dagger to Kavik's throat, and so this was his payback for doing that. So it's just a little bit of a kind of a rivalry kind of going on here between two of the younger members of the White Lotus here. But Do is here to report to the high up, of course, which is Ayunarak, and so they just kind of whisper about the dealings here, and she just says, "Tell them I'll handle it." And Do is a little bit surprised to realize that, like, oh, I don't get to hear what you're planning to do, but wait, it involves Kavik, so he gets put on the outs in this one. He doesn't get to know what happens next. Again, referencing the whole idea of each specific section doesn't know specifically what the other ones are doing, which adds on to what we learned from, I think, previous chapters about the whole idea of, well, if they all don't know what each other are doing for the most part, there absolutely could be a leak of information, which seems to be implied to be what happened. So, what's happening here? Ayunarak tells him that I'm taking you home, the Northern Water Tribe, and he's like, oh, is the heat off? Like, are the world leaders basically not really looking for me anymore? Like, so I won't be like captured immediately. And she notes that no, it most definitely is not. There's other reasons and things kind of going on here. So then we cut to basically them making their way into the Northern Water Tribe. So the main thing they note here is that Kavik notes that this is the second time he's being smuggled out of Bin it was actually easier to get out with the Order of the White Lotus. Like, Ayunarak has more connections in a way than Yangchen does. The way she just got them out was so much easier than what he had to do in the first book. But there's still a little bit of kind of stealth stuff that going on here, because no one can know that they're entering the north, so they have to secretly enter there. So we very quickly just basically time skip most of the journey. So they're just kind of like hanging out around the sort of like coast of the Northern Water Tribe, about to make their kind of entry. But it's of course going to be kind of spy-esque what's going to happen here. So she mentions here, we're entering bubble style like I thought you. And so we get this whole like action sequence here where they get in an umiak, which is basically this kind of traditional water tribe kind of canoe type thing. I think it's basically meant to be the kind of courage test thing that Sokka does, that sort of a type of ship. But anyway, they get into that, and as they get closer, they tip it over. So they're now kind of in the water, the bottom of the ship is facing up. A Unarak bends a bubble of air around them, but basically like moving the water out of the way so they can breathe. And Kavik does most of the sort of like kind of thrusting them through the water. So this is how they're going to stealthily enter Agna Kel-A, is through a secret entrance that they have by kind of going underwater a bit. It's a pretty detailed kind of scene, the way we get it described here. It's like this very complicated sequences, like a Unarak is actually doing some very complex water bending to keep the air bubble up, because of course she's dealing with like the aerodynamics of like they're flying through the water. She has to keep the bubble up while they go at speed. Kavik has to, you know, keep the speed up effectively as well. There's a bit of a kind of a moment where like a Unarak kind of loses control for a little bit of a second. Things are going out of control quite quickly. They could get caught here. So Kavik realizes, okay, we have to go for it now. He can roughly see the kind of hole in the ice under the water where they're heading for. So he just goes for it. And it's interesting here. He uses a move that's basically inspired by Yangchen's like air spout. So kind of underwater sideways, he does like a water kind of spout underwater. Because it's noted that the water tribe styles don't, of course, use their feet as much typically. So he does some big kind of swimming kind of water bending and propels them through the water, and they just about enter the secret kind of tunnel. And they describe it as basically this kind of reverse kind of fun water slide where they kind of go like up a spiral, and of course end up kind of inside basically a cavern within the ice wall of the Northern Water Tribe here. So they managed to make their way inside with just some kind of bumps and bruises. And there immediately an Order of the White Lotus member rushes over, and she's like to Kavik, "You dolt, you could have killed the Executor." So straight away, interesting reveal. That is the title within the Order of the White Lotus for a Unarak. She is an Executor or the Executor. Now, Kavik, of course, really wants to know, what does that mean? Where exactly is that positioned within the organization? But I don't think the book ever fully makes it clear where that is. Again, we'll focus more on our Unarak scenes kind of as we go forward and maybe try and figure it out. But I don't remember this ever getting explained to us. But at least there's a title and something interesting to note. So Unarak is just like, no. He did the right thing. We would have been caught otherwise. This was the right thing to do. So Kavik gets some praise from his Sifu in this situation. So the woman here is kind of like our friend. She's beginning to speak to a Unarak, and Unarak's just like, please, you can call her the Avatar here. We're with inside company. You can like lay off the code names here. You know, he's with the organization basically. This woman's name is Ivalu. For anyone wondering, that is Ivalu. That is the pronunciation from the audiobook as well. So she's not a particularly notable character, but she's just here as like the person keeping track of, I suppose, the secret entrance here to the Northern Water Tribe. So she notes that we lost sight of the Avatar a day ago. You know, her bison and lemurs are still in the Northern Water Tribe, but she also didn't come with a glider. Kavik is like, wait, how do you know specifically the lemurs are here? Because they fly around the place all the time. You have eyes on them, basically. And she just notes they're hovering around the back court of the chief's temple. They haven't moved since a day ago. A Unarak kind of picks up and is just like, wait, you've lost track of the Avatar for like an entire day, and she's potentially been missing for the whole day? Like, what's going on here? And she notes, like, you know that area where it leads to, referencing the spirit oasis, and she's like, yeah, of course we know where it is. We checked to make sure if she was meditating in there, and she's not in there. And Kavik is immediately beginning to kind of be like, oh no, I think I might have a sense for kind of what's going on here overall. Her body, you mean her body is not there? And Ayunarak figures it out at basically the same time, that they're like, oh, something must have gone wrong, meditating into the spirit world. We've got to go to the spirit oasis to help out. Something has gone wrong here. One final detail before the scene ends is Kavik mentioning his own potential brush with the spirits. Now, this is a very, very interesting one, because it's an incident that we sort of know about. This is Kavik and Kalyan being lost in the blizzard. This was, of course, the time when that ultimately resulted in Kalyan losing 2 of his fingers, of course. That incident that Kavik can never forget. It is noted here that they only survived by the skin of their teeth. They told their parents afterwards the route that they were sure they trekked through. His parents had the same reaction as Ivalu, but we checked that path on that day. The weather was clear. We couldn't find you. So there's this weird sense of like, wait, what happened here? Like they got lost because of spirits. They found their way back because of spirits. It's a bit of an interesting one where, again, they don't really come back to it. So there just seems to be some sense of like, okay, I guess there was some sort of spirit type thing that happened there. That maybe the blizzard coming in was the result of some sort of a spirit type effect. But it's just an interesting detail that they presented there anyway. But yeah, we cut to immediately, of course, the rush to get to the spirit oasis. And again, they note that they're undercover here. They're not even meant to be in the city. And of course, most people are not typically just allowed to go to the spirit oasis. So they have to stay undercover here. Though Kavik does note that, you know, even with the Avatar's life potentially in danger, the White Lotus sacrificed speed for secrecy. And that is done above all else here. So they find their way to where Pick and Pack are. And of course, we know from the previous chapter, Yangchen left them outside. So they've been kind of clawing away at the ice outside, you know, waiting for their master to return, basically. And there's a fun moment here where like they immediately recognize Kavik and start kind of crawling around his face and stuff like that. He tells them to kind of stay here, and they roughly seem to listen. And yeah, Ivalu is expected to keep watch as Ayunarak and Kavik head inside. They again go through the wooden door that Yangchen went through. So they're now in the spirit oasis. Yeah, we go inside, and Kavik is of course noting that like, I can't believe I'm entering this kind of sacred place. This is this crazy, unbelievable situation here. So once again, he is shocked by like how beautiful it is inside. But initially, there's no one there. Nothing is going on in the area. And so it's actually surprisingly hot inside. He wipes the sweat off his forehead. And so as he kind of like, it goes past his eyes, it goes from no one being there to all of a sudden Yangchen is there. And he kind of realizes, wait, what happened? And he figures it out that, oh, she must have literally, as this happened, phased back into the physical world in that exact moment. But she is basically fighting the kind of spirit to a certain degree. It's mentioned out here, her body suddenly jerked, her elbow dragged upward as if attached to a rope. And Ayunarak notes, something has followed her through. When he finally sees Yangchen's eyes, it is noted her eyes glowed. So it is the Avatar state that she is in here, kind of to fight off the spirit. But of course, she is very much struggling here. It's sort of like kind of dragging her around. And of course, they don't know what's really going on here because it's this like living mist or fog is all they can make out. That is somehow kind of throwing Yangchen around the place. So they kind of spread out. Kavik goes straight over. Ayunarak gets some water. The water doesn't really do anything to it, of course. So Kavik does the only final thing he can think of is that ah, the water from the sacred pool with the koi fish in it. Everyone in the Northern Water Tribe knows the kind of legends that is this kind of sacred water, unlike any in the world. So he's kind of like, I'm very sorry that I have to do this, and so he water bends some of the spirit water and splashes it over Yangchen, and this works. This just completely works. It seems to be this kind of almost like exorcism style moment where the fog like screeches back and immediately kind of flies out of Yangchen because it was trying to like enter her basically. So this seems to work. There's a kind of purifying aspect to the spirit water here. I guess because the fog is probably dark in some way, the spirit water kind of affects it in some way like that. But it helps Yangchen, so this has saved her in this situation. And so she's obviously covered in water, so she wakes up kind of like coughing. And of course, a Unarak jumps on this and is just like, this is why spirit journeys are taken with partners, basic safety. And Yangchen just kind of lies back down and is just like, you're not my boss. So continuing on the kind of dynamic that they had from the first book, where both of them don't like each other for their exact approaches of like, Ayunarak doesn't like how active Yangchen is and that she'll do stuff like this that's a bit dangerous, a bit wild, and Yangchen doesn't like that Ayunarak kind of waits too long before kind of acting to do things. So this is potentially obviously an example of her actually acting very suddenly to a situation happening. So interesting stuff there. But yeah, we end the chapter with like Kavik and Yangchen in the same scene together. We have the Order of the White Lotus with Yangchen kind of a scene here, so there's no great build up to it. It's just, hey, it happened, we saved Yangchen, everyone's up here in the Northern Water Tribe, and immediately the two characters who have this kind of complicated relationship at this point are put in the same scene together. So we're going to see some interesting character development kind of happen here straight away. And I think this is absolutely the right choice. It would have been, I think, a mistake to just keep the two characters separated for too long. So this is actually a perfect way to do it. And it's a really like action-packed chapter. Like the kind of cool kind of water stealth spy thing that they do to enter is fun. The kind of spirit encounter that Kavik and Ayunarak get involved in, continuing on from the previous chapter, the use of the spirit water here I think is pretty clever. And then learning bits and pieces about sort of how mundane it is being low ranked in the Order of the White Lotus, and how he's learned some cool waterbending skills because he's been training under a master. But beyond that, he doesn't know any like extra secrets that he knew from before. So he very much gives the impression of like, he appreciates the extra training, but the actual organization maybe hasn't impressed him a particular amount so far. So he doesn't necessarily have any huge sense of like loyalty to them, except for the fact that they have protected him and they have, basically saved his parents as well. So he kind of owes them one, but, you can tell he's not like, super into the whole thing here. And now I suppose we're going to get to see, him try to make amends with Yangchen, but also, this complicated situation where he technically works for the organization that she hates. So, fun dynamics here. And so there's a fun part on the final page as well of just like Kavik just noting the crazy situation that he's in, that like it's the Avatar and a super high up executor of the Order of the White Lotus, two people who could shape the world themselves, and he's there with them helping to save the day. It's just like, how do they end up in this situation? Again, kind of very similar to his situation at the start of the first book, where he's like, how on earth have I encountered the Avatar? And now he's kind of even further into kind of world affairs. But that's what makes Kavik such an interesting character. He always kind of reflects back on his completely normal background in the grand scheme of things compared to a lot of the other characters that we see. But yeah, good chapter, nice progress in this one. But in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are. But that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.